Welcome to Conscious I, living in authentic connection and harmony with self, others, and the world, featuring Ravi and Savitri.
Because we do a Midwestern rap for sure. We
Whatever
do
that
the
is. I
Midwest
see, I grew
goodbye.
up in the East Coast. There's still some
Uh,
stuff that I say and do that people are like, what's that? Oh, just never mind. It doesn't make
well,
any
I
sense.
do the Irish goodbye quite often. I mean,
Mhm.
back in my day, I was very big on the Irish goodbye. Oh, by the way, I should say good morning, Savitri.
Good morning, Ravi.
And so yeah, I do I remember in my younger years definitely doing the Irish goodbye when you just kind of zippity doo dah out of a room without telling anyone. The Midwestern goodbye is the uh prolonged, yep, see you later, getting looped back into conversation. All right, now love y'all. Okay, bye. Oh, did you say goodbye over here to, and then you're back
Oh,
in
is that
10 or
what
20
that
minutes.
is?
The Midwest,
Okay.
the Midwestern goodbye.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I didn't realize it was a thing. So
Oh, it's a
it's really
thing.
thank you for that. All these years, I'm like, why are we? I mean, I thought we said goodbye at least a dozen times, and I just thought it was a natural product of, but it's a Midwestern
The
goodbye.
Midwestern
Oh,
goodbye. Okay.
okay.
Well,
Yeah,
we can say good
interesting.
morning
Yeah,
again.
thank you
So
for that.
yeah, so good morning on this beautiful May Day. Well, day after May Day
Right,
morning, right?
right. And there are lots of celebrations going on for May Day yet this weekend, and we can talk a little bit about that, I think. And then we also have a couple other things that show up this time of the year. Beltane. We had a full moon yesterday at 12:22. Not to get that specific, but that's kind of what I do. And so you may still see a really vibrant moon yet tonight. It was the flower moon. And looking at Vedic astrology, the moon was in Swati, Nakshatra, visiting Swati, his wife, Swati. And Swati brings us an interesting time. Sometimes Swati gets kind of passed by, not well described or brought forward, but there are some really special qualities about Swati that I'd just like to mention quickly, and then we can move on to the
Yeah, great, because
celebration.
I'm not familiar with the qualities of Swati.
Yeah, Swati, Swati means sword. So if you think about where we've been with the moon for the last couple of days, before Swati, we had Chitra, where the celestial architect Tavashtar chips away at our form and it causes ego, I'll say reactions, and sometimes responses if we're lucky, until we have shaped the ego in a way that the inner light of the soul is able to come forward and it leads us there. Well, Chitra then, after all that work on our ego during that time, we move into Svati. And Svati is when we have the sword to be able to cut away obstacles in our path, discover freedoms that we hadn't discovered before, and feel a sense of lightness. And it's in Libra. And so, being in Libra with Venus ruling that, we can get an idea that Venus likes things to feel good. It need the beauty, and it's an airy sign, so it has a sense of lightness and the quality of new ideas because our ego has just been, um, in some ways, modified, never deactivated, but modified in a way that we're able to respond differently to our environment and to our own internal self. So Swati gives us that new pathway. And sometimes I think about Swati as uh, I'm in a jungle, and we have all this growth, and it's dense, and it's warm, and it's humid, lush, and that would be very much like Venus. Everything's lush and luxurious and vibrant. And in order to feel good, I have a sword. My path is forward. I can't see it, but I need to use the sword like a machete to cut away and be able to step forward one step at a time and feel really solid and secure about it. So, a little bit about Swati, and that's what our full moon brought to us. There are other attributes, but those are the ones that seem to really resonate this month as moon went through Swati.
The Kundalini process works. It's a chiseling away of the ego until you get to the radiant self, and you have that more clear pathway forward. So I love that description and how that really resonates with how Kundalini yoga works. And
Yeah,
that chiseling process is uncomfortable. That's
mhm.
it's not a comfortable process. It's a refining process, and it exposes areas of vulnerability that you maybe didn't know were there. But when you get completely through to the light and you crack that open and you can see your way forward, um, just exactly like you said that and explained so beautifully. Um,
I just
that's
want to go on one just quickly. Let me just take us into the next couple days then, because you just opened that space. We'll be in Vishaka today. And Vishaka is a place where we get put on the potter's wheel as a lump of clay, and we are spun by the potter, the celestial potter, until we are formed. So Chitra worked on our ego. Svati gave us a little reprieve where we could feel the energy and power of the sword to be able to begin to carve away a pathway. And then we get put back on the potter's wheel to reform again. And the last portion of Vishaka, which will be overnight tonight, we find our way to the archway of transformation. And we can choose to step through, or we can choose not to, or we might just be sent through.
Yes, that's a beautiful connection. And you have to go through that work and, make that path forward and be reshaped. And, that new energy rises, which ties in so beautifully with Beltane, of course.
Yes.
But I also want to, before stepping into that fully, I just, for folks who may be joining us for the first time, or even listeners who have been with us for a while and aren't as familiar with the Vedic, lineage, which we've talked about, Jyotish, the study of light, and how,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
the study of this astrology is just, these are points of like the lens, being lit up, areas in our life. But you're talking about the nakshatras, and we mentioned how the moon is in Libra, and if you're following social media or other popular forms of astrology, you're maybe hearing something different. So I just wanted to see if you could just speak a little bit on like the how, just tell us a little bit about where the nakshatras are and how the moon moves through them, because this is such a more precise study and lens and focus that you bring to the table, because the moon moves so quickly. And I think we don't really understand how it influences our daily mind and emotions. So,
Mm-hmm.
what you bring here through sharing that information about where we are and looking over the next couple days, I think is not only a wonderful way for us to plan and use this energy to our benefit, but yeah, if you just have a little bit to share on the nakshatras and where they're located and why they're so important to us daily.
Yeah, that brings to mind my morning moon briefs. Every day I write a bit about where the moon is in the sky, and you mentioned more precision in placement. And Vedic astrology is sidereal um, astrology, meaning that it's mathematically correct based on the actual locations of planets, including the moon as a planet, in the sky, and it is not related necessarily to the way the tropical or Western astrology is their methodology is brought to us. So there's a 23-degree difference in the actual placements on a chart from one system to the other, and I'm doing a 5 workshop series this summer. It's 2.5 hours, couple hours, 5 times. There'll be 2 in June, 3 in July, and it's on my website if you want to check in. And I'll be talking about Vedic astrology and also comparing in some ways the two systems. So I invite anyone that is a practitioner or has been experiencing tropical astrology and you're curious about the other method, check it out. I'll be looking at how things are the same and they're different, and it might help you get a sense of why you might be seeing two different methods coming across social media and other ways of doing it. But the moon briefs are based on the nakshatras, and the nakshatras are regions in the sky that, from Earth's perspective, are very well placed in and have very little movement. So they are great North Stars, so to speak. They're ways that we can take a look at navigation on Earth and navigation in space, and know that we're not going to have too many surprises and be able to actually go where we'd like to go. The nakshatras being the moon's wives, the moon visits a wife every day. So when I talk about Swati, Swati is the name of the moon's wife. And there's a region of the sky, about 13 degrees 20 minutes. Each nakshatra is the same measurement, and the moon moves through one roughly every day. I mean, some are a little longer, some are a little less, depends on where the moon's orbit or the moon happens to be in his orbit at that time, because the moon does get closer to the Earth. It's an elliptical path, and then there's another location on the orbit that's a little more distant. So we have a near and a far region of the orbit, which impacts how we perceive the moon moving as far as a speed or a rate of speed. So I don't know if that gets what you were talking about
Yep.
or not, or what you asked
It
me.
really does. I think it gives, it can, me, I were just going back to my understanding and my minimal knowledge, of that region of the sky, the nakshatras, really was beneficial in helping me understand the moon briefs and why and how they're so precise and impactful. So yeah, to listeners, if you're not tuned into those yet, like Savitri said, you can check that out, and you can check out other a deeper dive into Vedic astrology in general on the website. But
You know,
um,
I wanted to also mention that last Sunday afternoon, I had a Q&A about the moon briefs, and I recorded it. It's about an hour and 10 minutes or so, and we'll be sending it out today. And the people that have registered for that, it was free, by the way, registered for it will receive the recording. If you're listening at any time, that recording is in my library on YouTube, and you will be able to go out and see it. It's marked public, so just look
great.
for that.
We'll put a link. Why don't we put a link to that in our in the description?
Oh,
We'll do
okay.
that
Sounds
so
like a
that the
great
folks
idea.
can find it there. Yeah,
Perfect.
great. Okay. Well, so, that was a great lead into Beltane and this new opportunity to, I just think of this as just another point in the wheel of life that, kind of brings attention to the turning of that wheel and our turning with it. Um, this is the midpoint between spring equinox and summer solstice.
Mhm.
So, well, really May 1st, which was, if you're here with us in the States, was yesterday. And today is Saturday, May 2nd. So yeah, if you're here with us in the northern hemisphere, we're talking about warmer days, and it feels like there's a leaning into new energy, and those seeds that we planted maybe have started to sprout, and we're kind of wanting to get them out in the sun and transplant them. And there's a little bit of excitement in the air. Now, and if you're here with us in the Midwest, we've got that push-pull between the summer and winter goddesses, kind of one trying to uh, stay a little longer and one trying to make her way in. So we've got that going on here. We've gone from 80-degree weather down to the 40s, and back and forth we go for a little while longer. So you might want to hold off on planting those plants, although I see some going out, and we're probably about there. Mother's Day is when we can really put stuff out and
Right. Yeah, that's
and
coming up
and
too, and we'll
well,
have a
some.
special episode for Mother's Day as well. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, so that's where we're at. That's where we're coming into. And it's you know what I love about Beltane? It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It just kind of arrives. It's just here we go. We're just gonna you walk outside and see something new every day. Some
Mhm.
and again, I know I've said this before, but because I walk Darcy every day, I see a new little plant pushing up or a new little leaf emerging. We see more animals coming out, different birds. So it's that moment when the earth tips towards the light.
Mhm.
And we get those longer days and that new energy. And so it fits so well with where we are with this moon as well, and how we
Exactly.
can
Yes.
use this as a shift. So
Mhm.
this, when we talk about these energies, they're again, there's that potential for positive, negative, or neutral. And if we think about that wheel of fortune always turning, the wheel of life always turning, you we just I think and if that neutral state is just okay, there's always going to be that change, that wheel's always turning and turning, and we're just riding along with it. Are we kind of walking along the top, or are we laying down and getting crushed under it, right? So we've got new things. If we look at change, there can always be opportunity for something new and forwarding us in a better way. Or if our perspective is that, we're getting stuck and we're feeling crushed by the wheel, maybe we're not, moving along with that change. So again, it's just one of those times that we can use to to me, it's just that time where we can kind of take stock of where we are and see
Mhm. Mhm.
what is developing for us and how we're using that time. Now, of course, the historical, um, meaning and ritual of Beltane is a lot more complex than that. But anyway, I'm
Sure.
just kind of
Yeah, and
going on and
yeah, and I come from an Irish family, or my father's side, uh, and so there were certain times of the year that were important. This was one of them,
mhm.
and we had fireplaces in the home, and the tradition would be that if you happen to have fireplaces that was your main source of heat, which we of course didn't and don't at this point. Our utilities have taken the place of that. You would take the fire out, put the fire out, remove everything, clean the fireplace, have a bonfire on Beltane, and then build your new fire for the year in your fireplaces. And because of the utilities, and we didn't do that, my father always did, though, replicate a version of that, in that that was the day we cleaned the fireplaces. So for some of us, it wasn't really fun, but it wasn't the cleanest job that happened. But kids, we did it. We did what he did, and we did it with him. And so once we had the fireplaces cleaned out, then we knew that that night we would have a bonfire, and then he would take some of the logs that he would then put water on them. He would douse them basically when they were half burned, and then bring those in to the fireplace. And the next time we had a fire in the fireplace, they would be dried, of course, and he would use those as starter. And that, as I started reading more about Beltane for our conversation today, those memories started popping back. I'm like, okay, I remember having that every spring. Now I get it, And he would talk about it, and he would tell us what it was. But kids, frankly, I was busy building little ash things. I liked them, but
Right?
the ashes were so soft. But yeah, anyway, that's the story that I can remember about Beltane that was really important. And I always loved the bonfires. I mean, he just didn't do it on Beltane. We were a bonfire family. There was no question about that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a really beautiful memory. And I think it points out what I always notice about ritual, or I think about ritual. Ritual is that aspect, it's that thing that we can pull in with intention, and it becomes something very powerful. Or when it is something that we just do without the intention and the knowing, that meaning becomes lost, and then it becomes awakened again. It
Yeah.
can become awakened again. So that's such an interesting thing about ritual.
And I look
I,
back at my chart and my father's chart, my mother's chart. Unfortunately, I don't have the previous generation, but from my father's chart and mine, we have a significant number of planets in fire signs. And so that was always something that was a lot of fun for us. And when I looked at the charts, I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense to me, that
yeah.
we enjoyed having bonfires and dialogue and conversations and playing with the sparks and doing all kinds of fun things. He would tell me stories about the fairies, and yeah. So,
That's
yeah.
exactly what what it's about and what it is, and what a beautiful story to share to illustrate that so clearly. Um, you mentioned, there's lots of celebration going on, and I'm attending one tonight, a bonfire and Beltane celebration.
Cool.
And I do see a lot of, small gatherings popping up here and there. What I find interesting is that here, at least in the States, this isn't recognized, I don't think, generally in the community. We don't see any large community events related to May Day or Beltane. This is more of a smaller kind of sub-community celebration. And I think that says a lot about where we are as a country. So, this Beltane is a celebration that's deeply rooted in honoring fertility and growth and the divine feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And it centers around goddess worship, and it centers around the power of moon blood cycles, and it centers around rituals and intentions centered on feminine energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it does not surprise me very much that we don't see this as a prevalent, recognized celebration, at least in our area. Maybe that's different for others. But I am really, really excited to see that it's becoming really prevalent in smaller sub communities.
Yeah, and it's gone beyond just the Irish cultural traditions, and it, of course, is grounded in what all you just described. A lot of goddess honoring and energies of the earth, the energies of fire, and all the other elements: earth, air, fire, and water. So, yeah, when you mentioned the blood moon combination, there are indications. This is a little sidebar that maybe someone might be interested in, but there are some indications that often show up in women's charts having to do with the moon and Mars combination that might indicate reproductive concerns later in life, or other issues that may be involved, or the way those two planets are in a relationship in your chart might give some indications as to your general overall health in your reproductive system. Yeah.
Yeah, this is creative energy. This energy is about, fertility and creative energy. A lot of that is just about good old-fashioned sexual energy, but there's also lots of other creative
That's
energy,
right.
ways to nurture and create. It's also about abundance of crops and just prosperity in general. But we do have that creative energy. It comes, from our sacral chakra, and that is our both creative and sexual energy. And of course, May Day with the maypole and the May Queen and the cauldron, which represents the womb. Um, the maypole, which represents the phallus, and the green man and the May Queen are there to copulate and bring about, abundance. I think so I was running across. I'm always looking for like interesting stories and
Mm-hmm.
how these rituals come to be, and I love. So there was, of course, the Puritans, the pious Puritan pastor writing, if 10 maiden went to celebrate the May Day in the forest, so they had the um, Greenwood marriage
Mm-hmm.
when the Green Man and the May Queen would go off into the forest. And um, so if 10 maiden went into the forest to celebrate May, nine of them would come home with child. And so they had, so he, this is this pious Puritan pastor, like, preaching, this is horribly wrong. 10 women go out into the woods and celebrate with this Greenwood marriage, and they come back with child. So they they banned maypoles in
That's right.
1600 and
That's
May
right.
Day, and it was a
Mm-hmm.
form. And so, it cracks me up a little bit when I think of it, like looking at it from that perspective. And then we look at the world today, and on May 1st, how ironic is it that the administration banned the mailing of mifepristone, which is
Mm-hmm.
the medical abortion pill.
Mm-hmm.
I've just found that to be quite an interesting connection.
Yeah, things are often purposeful, even though we may or may not know the synchronization of certain events that happen. Uh, yeah, kind of interesting how
So,
that works. Well, we look at the founding philosophies and energies and perspectives of any organization, in this case, the country, and that founding perspective really has continued to flourish, unfortunately, in our country in a way that we're seeing now a backlash to some of the opportunities. And I use that word because it really points at the fact that women needed to find opportunities for certain rights and abilities. In other words, as a woman, we spend our life asking permission.
If that sounds contradictory, if that, to not to make that connection of how those are connected, again, Beltane, May Day is about honoring and celebrating the divine feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that when it's doesn't, where when we have an administration and we're living in a society and in a social environment that is about removing the, rights, although that might have sounded like a contradiction, what it does is highlight again the fact that Beltane is honoring the divine feminine, the female, the balance and harmony of nature, and following the matriarchal model of collaboration over competition, caring over control, and nurturing over extraction and dumping, like we talked about in our previous episode, a couple episodes ago when we talked about Earth Day, reciprocity over accumulation. So I think it ties in that way that it's something to keep our eye on and find real ways to keep celebrating together, acknowledging the divine feminine, worshiping the goddess in all, and keeping that intention and attention alive.
Another thing about May Day that maybe wasn't top of the news, but there were quite a few demonstrations around the world having to do with workers' rights and labor unions and some other things that are also being um, narrowed and brought into a less than ideal environment. So I just wanted to mention that May Day also has a really strong presence with workers and people that um, are part of the collective that provide so many services and give us the uh, the commodities that we need for life. From just I mentioned we no longer have fireplaces in the home. Well, we have utilities. There are plenty of people that work in in those sectors, and so it was a really important day, and it didn't just focus on the United States. It was global in Europe, Africa, many other places. So if anybody's interested in doing a little more research and learning about how workers and labor unions use May Day as an inflection point for their voices, there you will find information out there about what occurred yesterday.
And there's more going on today, at least in our local community.
Oh,
So,
great. Okay, I
mhm.
didn't know about that. That's good news.
Yeah, yeah. But it's that's exactly right. And I want to iterate that this is the divine feminine lives in all of us.
Hmm.
And when we honor the divine feminine, we honor all. And really the divine masculine as well, the green man, that raw natural force. They need to be in balance. And so this time is a reminder of what can be when we bring those divine forces into balance and release the control, or the desire to control, um, the desire to create constant growth without intention. other than to feed a system that just needs more bodies but to not collapse. So,
Mhm.
bringing that intention back to what is really sacred. And that is our relationships with each other, our relationships with our earth. And we really are in a place of reevaluating that, especially women, as our bodies and our rights have not been respected, and we pull back from relationships, maybe with men in particular, or we demand more in different areas of our life, or we demand change in societal structures. So I think, we're in this stage of redefining, of evolution, of redefining what those relationships look like in maybe on a personal level as well as in the collective. And this is a very sacred time to turn to and intentionalize what we want that to look like.
Yeah. And you mentioned sacred, and there actually is one more thing that this full moon was honored for, and that was the day of Buddha's enlightenment. It's the Vesak festival that happens the first full moon of every month of May. And it's actually in the month of Vishaka. Moon is in the Nakshatra Vishaka. I mentioned that. That's where the archway of transformation is. So we'll be moving through that energy today. And even though yesterday, the full moon, was the time when we would honor Buddha's day of enlightenment as he sat under the Bodhi tree, um, there are locations where this is very culturally strong in communities, and they'll be celebrating throughout the month that this is Buddha's month. And if we had an opportunity to honor Buddha in meditation last night or yesterday afternoon when the actual full moon occurred, um, that is another May Day synchronization for this month and this year. So it's the time when we mark the birth and the enlightenment and the death of Buddha all at once. And from the Hindu perspective, Buddha is often considered and written about as an avatar of Vishnu, who is the god that preserves the life of the cosmos and specifically the life of Earth. So just wanted to add that as the more sacred way of looking at May Day. And when we think about all of the different topics that we covered today, from Beltane, the cultural uh, exploration and celebration, and the May Day aspects of that, and May Day for the workers, and Vesak for Buddha's enlightenment. It was such a powerful, and still is, powerful energy. So find some time today to enjoy it in a way that you might best enjoy it. Maybe it's out in
Yep.
nature. Mhm.
Check your local sources, see what's going on around you. There's bonfires, drum circles, lots of stuff going on out there. You can find a place, make a fire, a flower wreath. There's all kinds of things going on, and find something local. Bonfire, a drum circle, a full moon gathering, something that you may use to intentionalize whatever you wish to intentionalize for yourself during this very powerful time where we honor the divine feminine and the divine masculine. so
Yeah.
that we can lean into a future that balances those, brings more harmony and peace and uh, collaboration between
Yeah.
unification.
And that fits beautifully with Moon in Libra, that balance and harmony. And from the Buddha's teachings, part of the honoring and the celebration is to practice compassion and recognize impermanence and get okay with that. And that helps us become detached, become more responsive and less reactive, so that our egos are now placed in a way that they no longer control us, but we are able to utilize the energies of our egos in a way that protects us rather than causes us to react and feel chaotic. So, yeah.
And we take that new form and that revealed light and we move forward and then we do it all again.
Yeah, and we will. So, thank you, everyone. We appreciate you joining us and being part of our dialogue. We look forward to any comments that you may have. Please put those in. We will be coming up to a comment review episode in a couple of episodes. So, if you have something that you've been thinking about from previous episodes or this one that you would like to be part of the dialogue, this is a great time. Put your comment in. Let us know what
Let
you're
us
thinking.
Yeah, let us know. Let us know what you've been doing over the moon and Beltane and May Day, or if you went to a rally in your community. We'd love to hear that too.
Yeah.
Whatever's going on, we'd love to hear from you. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll drop that website link in the comments or
Oh,
in the description. So, and we'll see you all here next week. Sat Nam.
namaste.